I read that the first time that you ever saw your father cry was when Martin Luther King was assassinated.
Yes.
Can you take us back? Can you take me back? What was that moment like for you? What happened for you in that moment?
Well, it was a very different thing. At the time, I was in Boston, Massachusetts, and we had just returned back to the States from an American embassy assignment. I grew up as an American embassy kid, traveling and living all around the world. And so I was at the age of 10, and we had just come back home. The State Department is in Washington, D.C., which is usually where we'd come back to. But my father wanted to finish up his master's degree at Boston University. So we came back to Boston for him to do that. And I was in our apartment or our townhouse watching Bewitched, the old TV show with a witch named Samantha Stevens and Darren Stevens. And it was on, I was watching it, and all of a sudden, in the middle of the program, there was like a beep, 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 which is usually a special bulletin. The news is going to interrupt the show. And this guy comes on, the newscaster, I think it was Walter Cronkite or somebody, and he's saying, I mean, he was almost crying. And he was saying that he hated to make this announcement, but the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King had just been assassinated in Memphis. Now, believe it or not, I had no idea at that time who Martin Luther King Jr. was. I was overseas. I was missing a lot of the things that were going on around here. And I'm not trying to be facetious or try to be funny or anything like that. I'm just being real. At the time, I'm 10 years old. I did not understand why this announcement had to interrupt my program. Because back then, they didn't freeze the program. They interrupted the program, but the program was still continuing in the background. So whenever you rejoined it, you'd already missed part of the program. And so I couldn't figure out why this couldn't wait for the 6 o'clock news. But I figured it was important. So I went into the study where my father was. My mother was in Roanoke, Virginia, visiting with her parents. And she was coming back, I think, the following day or 2 days later. Anyway, my father was in the study typing up something. And I said, hey, this news guy just broke in to the program and said that somebody named Martin Luther King Jr. had been assassinated. My father looked at me and said, what? And I told him again. And his head fell into his hands. And he started crying. And not making a lot of noise, but you're just tearing up. And I'd never seen that before. I've seen my mom cry over different things, but my father was a very strong individual, and I'd never seen him cry, and I didn't understand the significance of this. And then he began to tell me who this guy was. And my father had marched with Dr. King. And so that night, there were riots going on all over Boston and every major city in the country. People setting stuff on fire, looting, the whole 9 yards. And it was just, oh my goodness, it was terrible. Actually, we were in Belmont, Massachusetts. We had moved to Belmont from Boston. Belmont is a suburb of Boston. We first settled in Boston, and the schools were so bad there that my father took me out of the school, and we moved to Belmont, where it had better schools. So that's where it happened. Where I was watching the TV program. And that night, with all the rioting, we went down to our old neighborhood and got some of my friends from there, where we'd first moved, and brought them out to Belmont just for their safety. And it was then that I began learning about Dr. King and all the great things that he had done, and he became a hero of mine. I wrote a letter of condolence to Coretta Scott King. And I never heard back, but of course, she got millions of letters from all over the world. Later on, when I would start writing my book on the Klan and everything, I wrote a letter to James Earl Ray, the person who was convicted of assassinating King. Now, I never believed that Ray killed King. I never believed that, but I wrote a letter to him, and he wrote me back. And I still have that letter, and we had this correspondence going on. James Earl Ray was definitely a racist, no question about it, but he did not assassinate King. His brother, Jerry Ray, was in the Klan down in Alabama. Even the King family today does not believe that James Earl Ray did it. He was set up as a patsy. But that was my introduction to Martin Luther King, and he became a hero of mine then and to this day. And I keep learning new things about him, even still. The guy was just incredible in all his accomplishments and a great inspiration to me. He has tons of quotes that I live by and that I admire. But one that probably drove me was in his I Have a Dream speech. I'm going to paraphrase it. One of his dreams in that speech was he had a dream that one day the sons of former slave owners would sit down to the table of brotherhood with the sons of former slaves. And that's what I'm attempting to do, and that's what I've been successful in doing.